Welcome to the first ever history lesson by Baloy. So for those of you who don't know, I actually like history. I like it, but I don't like actually deeping it. But today we're gonna actually deep it. Maybe in the years from now, I learned something crazy. But I'll be reading, I'll be reflecting, I'll be writing down notes. Now, with that being said, leave now. Don't watch this video because it's gonna be boring. Very boring. Very, very boring. It's currently 10:30. I'm gonna see how far I can go. My brain is absolutely sizzling as we speak. I really need to cut down on the caffeine. It's affecting my brain. But here we go. Okay. I have an ebook on my phone. That's where I'm reading from. And then here's where I'll write down my notes. Okay, we're doing the Epistemic Freedom. This book we're currently reading. It's by Sabelo Jane Lovukacheni. Yeah, if Suzanne says I didn't read, bruh, I'll send her this video. I'm dying. We don't like reading, Suzanne. Our brains are not programmed like this. We try. We really do, hey. But I'm better. I'm better than those students of yours. Okay. Epistemic Freedom in Africa. Doesn't matter how many pages, you just read. Epistemic freedom in Africa is about the struggle for African people to think, theorize, interpret the world, and write from where they are located, unencumbered by Eurocentrism. The imperial denial of common humanity to some human beings meant that in turn their knowledge and experiences lost their value. So basically, she's talking about how she wants, it's a she. How Kachin. Talking about how the when they talk about Eurocentric, how the Europeans wanted to write the story through their perspective, even though they were writing about us as us Africans. Abantu abamnyama. My jaws are dying. And it's not a two thing. I wasn't sucking dick or anything. Just my jaws. The imperial denial of common humanity to some human beings meant that in their knowledge and experiences lost their value, their epistemic virtue. Now, in the 21st century, descendants of enslaved, displaced, colonized, and racialized peoples have entered academies across the world, proclaimed loudly that they are human beings, their lives matter, and they were born into valid and legitimate knowledge systems that are capable of helping humanity to transcend the current epistemic and systematic crisis. Together, they are engaging in diverse struggles for cognitive justice, fight against the epistemic line that haunts the 21st century. The renowned historian and decolonial theorist Sabelo J. Kajeni offers a penetrating and well-argued case for centering Africa as the legitimate historic unit of analysis and epistemic site from which to interpret the world, while simultaneously making an equally strong argument for globalization knowledge from Africa to attain ecologies of knowledges. This is a dual process of both deprovincialization and Africa and in turn provincialization. The book highlights how mental universe of Africa was invaded and colonized, the long-standing struggles for an African university, and the trajectories of contemporary decolonial movements such as Rhodes Must Fall and Fees Must Fall in South Africa. This landmark work underscores the fact that only once the problem of epistemic freedom has been addressed can Africa achieve political, cultural, economic, and other freedoms. This landmark work underscores that the fact that the only problem that the problem of epistemic freedom has been addressed can achieve. Okay. This groundbreaking new book is accessible to students and scholars. Okay, blah, 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 blah. Do we actually have to know about who? Okay, it's not that big. Gajeni is Sabele Ndlovu Gajeni is a executive director of Change Management Unit, CMU, the principal, okay, he's a lot of things, man, but okay. In the principal and vice chancellor office of the University of South Africa, UNISA, and the professor of African political economy at the Thabo Mbeki African Leadership Institute. At the same time, previously, he headed the Arki Mafeja Research Institute of Applied Social Policy. He is the author of 14 books, including The Coloniality of Power in Post-Colonial Africa, Myths of Decolonization. Yeah, he's a lot of things. Well done, Mr. Sjabe. I mean, fuck, Mr. Gajeni. Sabelo Gajeni. Ndlovu Gajeni. Okay, so first we have Rethinking Development. Is this even a book? No. I'm gonna start the actual book. Ish. That was only an intro, and we're 6 minutes in already. Okay, I'm gonna skip to the actual book. List of illustrations, introduction, see key. Okay, let's go. Introduction. See key epistemic freedom first. Epistemic freedom in Africa. Deprovincialization and decolonization is a study of the politics of knowledge in general, and specifically African struggle of epistemic freedom as a result of a long-term consequences of modernity, enslavement, and colonialism. Listen carefully. Yo, if you're still here in the video, what's wrong with you? Honestly. Okay. Yeah, if you're not asleep, come listen to me. Decolonization is the study of politics of knowledge in general and specifically of African struggles of epistemic freedom. Okay, I think we can write that down. It describes decolonization. How am I gonna get decolonized if I can't even spell it? Decolonized is a study of the, and you see, this is what makes me smart, is even though this part is bad, because the only schoolwork I've done is literally on a Sunday and it's 10:30. We're gonna have to write something on the essays, and people are gonna do swag. I'm gonna get 80%. Doesn't mean I have to read all the books, but I have to push and try my hardest. It's a study of the politics of knowledge and I'm gonna post this on YouTube, and then it's gonna break down some of my words in general and specifically of African struggles for epistemic freedom. What an intro. Okay. As a result of long-term consequences of modernity, enslavement, and colonialism, African people have been reduced as agents in a Eurocentric history. What exists today is conventional philosophy of history and academic discourse of history produced with modern universities is still normality Eurocentric. Neo-Enlightenment, Neo-Hegelian, Neo-Marxist, Neo-Modernism, and Habermasism. Words to search. Habermasium. I don't know what that means. Habermasium. In the context, though, could about historic changes still hostile to. In this context, thought about historical change is still hostile to resilient linear social evolutionary notions of transitional shifts. This is in reference to Bambara 2007, section 424, something like that. I don't know. This is like the Bible, the way they're trying to write it. But okay, a major consequence of this Eurocentric thinking is that what is today known as African history has been subsumed to the ideology, parameters, and periodization of general framework, be it colonial, nationality, or Marxist. This point was delivered more empathically by Deepesh Chakrabarty when he argued Europe remained the sovereign theoretical subject of all histories. Damn, including the ones we call Indian, Chinese, Kenyan, and so on. It was perhaps this reality that provokes the African historian to pose the question: can African history recapture this historical space and reintroduce an African philosophy of history to that emphasize African autonomy, pushed by a paradigm shift from African historiographs to an African philosophy on history? In earlier publications, eloquently expressed the epistemic quandary haunting the so-called African history. And then this is written at another font. Has the time to question the unity acceptance of hegemonic episteme, which posits the discipline of history uniquely belongs to the Western civilization. Alternatively, can Africans articulate an African genosis that stands independently of these Western traditions in our study of history? Need African epistemism being intelligible to the West? Need the study and practice of history to be tied to the guide of historical study in the universities? Is there still a lingering possibility that any of us working within this Western mode can have arterial bypass surgery that may still be the viaduct upstream to African reservoirs of like, bro, just speak English, dog. Like, what are you saying? At another level, Amy Allen correctly critiqued Eurocentric notions of macro history. Macro history. I don't know what they're saying, but I think he's touched, bro. Macro history. And apparently, this is what the thing I don't like about school is, like, Suzanne, when I try sometimes get like genuinely trying to understand what the heck I'm going through, I'm saying in terms of what I'm reading and stuff, she looks at me like, you fucking baboon. That's what I hate. That's what I hear in my head as I'm trying to talk and trying to process. And I'm like, okay, maybe whatever we're learning, maybe I am part baboon. Then help this baboon get unbabulized or something, bro. But also, it's like, you don't eat pap. Like, and I can speak more languages than you. So who's I don't know. That's fine, is what I'm saying. If global unity and capacity to make history are themselves historical developments that have emerged relatively recently, then they cannot be made the premises of an understanding of history as a whole. Let's put that down. History, from what I learned, I have a section called What I Learned. History doesn't start only when the white man arrives. That is a Eurocentric point of view. We're learning something. Hee. Okay. At another level, Amy Allen correctly critiqued Eurocentric notions of macro history in this revealing words: if global unity and If global unity and capacity to make history are themselves historic developments that have emerged relatively recently, then they cannot be made the premises of understanding of history as a whole. Hence the urgent need for epistemic freedom, which restores to African people a central position within human history as independent actors. Hence the urgent need for epistemic freedom, which restores to African people a central position with human history as independent actors, which is basically what I've been saying. The epistemological concern is fundamentally decolonial. As people, Africans were always there in human history. They were never creatures of discovery. Okay, that's interesting. Africans were creatures of discovery. Meaning, okay, I'm just putting that on top of whatever I had, and then I'll highlight these notes. I won't give you my notes. Maybe I could put in the video, but exporting this thing would be hell. They were never creatures of discovery. Africans were present African. That's an interesting term. Present African. That's what the fuck? Africans were always present. Were always present. That's such an interesting term. Africans were never absent. Africans were never tabula rasa, were never a dark continent. Africans always had their own valid, legitimate and useful knowledge systems and education systems. This is the decolonial tale. As the center of this book, the foundation of decolonial tale is well articulated by the whole Soyonka, who had this to say about Africa. The African continent appears to possess one distinction that is largely unremarked. Unlike the Americans and Australians, for instance, no one actually claims to have discovered Africa. Neither the continent has entity, nor indeed any of her later offspring, the modern states, celebrates the equivalent of America's Columbus Day. This gives a self-constitutive identity, an unstated autonomy, that is denied other countries and subcontinents. Africa appears to have been known about, speculated over, explored both in actuality and fantasy, even mapped. Greek, Jews, Arabs, Phoenicians, etc. took their turns, but no narrative has come down to us that actually lays personal claim to the discovery of the continent. Ancient ruins, the source of river, mountains, peaks, exotic kingdoms, and sunken pyramids, yes, but the continent itself, as in the case of Americas, hundreds have ventured into, explored, and intensively theorized over the continent, but no one has ever claimed to have ever discovered her. Soyonka challenged the colonial paradigm of discovery and highlighted Africa's primordial existence. This means that Africa has a long history that predated its encounter with... Okay, who's this guy? Yinka. I'm gonna push CS. I'm gonna carry my group so that when it's come to writing, I can, I don't know, I can actually find this shit quite interesting. I don't know if I need coffee. I'm not sleeping now. I'll just be late for school tomorrow. Then I'll work in class. Says aims to have discovered despite being mentioned in many accounts, like the Greek. Is it the Arabs as well? The Greeks, Arabs, and Jews. And like discovered. Okay, let me read what I'm saying. Soyinka says no one really claims to have discovered Africa despite being mentioned in many accounts, like the Greeks, Arabs, and Jews, unlike how America was said to be discovered, meaning the land has a long and predated history before the arrival of the European. I'll just keep saying the white man. Also, I would really like to make GB Studios based on things like this because they're so deep. And it's like, it's history that they don't teach in schools type shit. If I could rap about things I want like Christian, I'd be educating them like this. But apparently people don't like knowledge. Sionku challenged the colonial paradigm of the discovery and highlighted Africa's primordial existence. This means that Africa has a long history that predated its encounter with the Europe. It means that such a predominant entity had and has its own rich knowledge and that kept it alive. Interesting. I'll just put there. Africa would not be alive if did not survive till the arrival of the white man. Hey, we're cooking now. We're in it. And then we'll take a break after I think 45 minutes. And then more notes and then we'll go back into it. But as long as I'm getting some sauce, I think it's cool. This means that Africa has a long history. Okay, what is explored in this book is not only how Africa in particular and the rest of the global south in general become victims of genocide, epistemicides, linguicides. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, more terms to learn. Linguicide is crazy. I know it's a genocide, but what the fuck is a linguicide? Epistemicide. But also the trajectories of struggles for epistemic freedom that were provoked and ensued. English is such an interesting language, eh? And so thus conceptually speaking, the book delves deeper in such concepts as the epistemic line, as the problem of 21st century, the perennial problem of silence of African voices and problematic African archives enabled by the Europeanization of the world. On the other hand, a subalternization of Africa, and on the other hand, and the imperative of rethinking during the current age. The epistemic line. If the color line was indeed the major problem of the 20th century, as articulated by William W. Booth. Then that of 21st century is the epistemic line. The epistemic line cascades from the color line. Because denial of humanity automatically disqualified one from the epistemic virtue, the epistemic line is sustainable by the Boaventura de Sus Santos, 2007, termed a basal thinking, an imperial reason that reduced some humans beings to a subhuman category with no knowledge. Interesting. Okay, for write some notes. With no knowledge, this means that this epistemic line is simultaneously the ontology line. So, they call it the epistemic line, which talks about the color line. I want arrows. Which talks about the color line, which is essentially there. But I feel like a lot of Eurocentric had a lot of ontological line. Chical line. Okay. Thus the triple process of provincialization Europe, deprovincialization Africa, and epistemological decolonization, which frame this book, constitute a drive of restore epistemic agenda and process. Bro, I think we haven't even started reading the book, eh? Address ontological and epistemological issues haunting Africa. The definitive entry of descendants of the enslaved, displaced, colonized, and racialized people into the existing academics across the world, proclaiming loudly that they are human beings, their lives matter, and they were born into a legitimate knowledge system, enable the resurgence of long-standing struggles for their epistemic freedom. Thus, epistemic freedom speaks to cognitive justice. Epistemic freedom is fundamentally about the right to think, theorize, interpret the world, develop own methodologies, and write from where one is located and uncumbered by Eurocentrism. Eurocentric is one of the greatest ideologies, deformation of our time. Epistemic justice is about liberation of itself from coloniality. Africa is one of those epistemic sites that experience not only colonial genocide but also theft of history. Epistemicides, killing of, oh, there we got the word. Killing of indigenous people's knowledge. Damn, man. Killing of indigenous peoples. That's actually insane. Therefore, African people's epistemic struggles are both old and new. They are old in the sense that they emerged as the very time of colonial encounters. They are new in the sense that they are re-emerging within the context of deep present global systematic and epistemic crisis. What is projected here is the epistemological decolonization as a double task of provincialization Europe and deprovincializing Africa, and process of provincializing and deprovincializing are inextricably linked as they peak to how what appears on a global scale of European thought could be claimed and human heritage rather than a thought from one's geographic center. Provincialization is a process of moving for the center. To borrow a concept from moving the center is understood in a double sense. I am concerned with moving the center in two senses at least. One is the need to move the center from its assumed location in the West to multiplicity of spheres in all the cultures of the world. The assumed location of the center of the universe in the West is what goes by the Eurocentrism. Ooh, that's interesting. It's called Eurocentric because they put themselves in the middle. The So I'm saying it's called Eurocentric because they geographically put themselves in the middle. In the middle. And map out from where they come from. She's narcissistic much. Very narcissistic, eh? Very narcissistic behavior. Okay. I'm learning the power of words and words that I never knew existed. I'll put that as a subheading on my words to speech. Yo, I'm getting sick, bro. I think I am. Let's keep pushing. Then we'll get some coffee, caffeine, then keep it pushing. The second, I'm concerned with the movement at the least in two senses. At least one is the need to move the centric from its assumed location in the West to the multiplicity of the spheres in all the cultures of the world. The assumed location of the center of the universe in the West is what goes by the term Eurocentrism. The second sense is more important. Within nearly all nations today, the center is located in the dominant social stratum, a male bourgeois minority. Moving the center into senses between nations and within nations will contribute to the freeing of world cultures from the restrictive walls of nationalism, class, race, and gender. In this sense, provincialization, Europe is meant to confront the problem of overrepresentation, the representation of Europe thought in knowledge, social theory, and education, which resulted in the European historian celebrated as a Europeanization of the world. The provincialized Europe is fundamentally to de-Europeanize the world. The de-Europeanization of the world entails the Kun Shin Chen, depicted as de-imperialization, defined de-imperialization as movement that demanded imperial powers to genuinely reflect their imperial historians and the harmful impacts those have had on the world. This is fundamental to the colonial demand of which political decolonization of the 20th century failed to deliver. The process of de-Europeanization is here rendered as de-provincialization. Africa, an intellectual and academic process of centering of Africa as a legitimate historian unit of analysis and epistemic site from which to interpret the world, while at the same time globalization across Africa such as constitutes epistemic freedom as the essential prerequisite for political, cultural, economic, and other freedoms. I'm gonna stop there so I can make some coffee. But basically, it's saying if we need to do not deprovincialization but de-imperialization, is understanding that those people who implemented these European systems of thinking, it's the problem is not them the responsibility to decolonialize is that they should no longer impose, not no longer, but actively engage in what to do right, they need to remove what they've been doing and make people aware of these things, because what happened is now we're so far deep in their systems, like the social economic ways of working, and how the country runs, and how people think and believe, is all based on Eurocentric things, such as getting married, or what, status driven things. All these things are all Eurocentric based. I don't know how to explain this properly without using big words. It's like you're basically brainwashed to think whatever they think is correct, is correct also in your own way. And the truth is, each country had their own way of thinking, because before we were discovered by these people, we were doing just fine, because there were no bombs, no guns. Obviously, there were still wars among clans, but that's very common and very normal. So the idea is that they implemented their own strong, what's the word, epistemicide, which is killing of indigenous people knowledge. That's what they've basically done. So now we're trying to unkill knowledge, because knowledge can still live. The people may be dead from the past, but the theories, the ideas is something that we can reclaim back, which is why decolonialization is so important, so that we can reclaim back what we lost. And I think it's very powerful to think in today's context how I'm working on a computer, I have YouTube and things. That's a result of colonization. I mean, yes, colonialization. What's the word? Being colonized. It's the result of colonism. I can't even say that name right anymore. But it's a result of that. Even me speaking English, which I think is what is linguicide means, when you destroy a language. I'm just assuming. So by us reclaiming back our knowledge, putting it on the very same platforms and like mediums that were used to basically brainwash us, it's very much empowering, I think, as a Black African, to be able to do that. So I don't know if you learned anything today, but I definitely did. I'm gonna just go over my notes, so that for those who actually, for some reason, actually listen to what I had to say, kudos to you. Thank you for watching this video. You're better than me, because I'm forced to do this. Okay, so describe decolonization. It's a study of politics of knowledge in general, and specifically of African struggles for epistemic freedom. Now, words to search. I'm learning the power of words that I never knew existed. So all words have definitions. Here are the words that I need to research. Habermasium, which if you know the meaning, please put it in the comment section. Macrohistory, MACO, macro. I think it's supposed to be macrohistory. Macrohistory, linguicide, epistemicide, which I already defined. And then what I learned, Africans were creatures of discovery. That's what they. Oh no, Africans were not. Yes. We're not creatures of discovery, meaning history doesn't start only when the white man arrives. That's a Eurocentric point of view. Now, the presence Africain, it's a definition, so this has to go up, meaning Africans were always present. The fact that there's a term for that is actually so impressive. It's like, oh no, the white man, presence Africain. No, but what if the white presence Africain? But no, but the presence Africain. I was always here. No, but the black man must sleep. Presence Africain. No, but they are stupid baboons. Presence Africain. Presence Africain. Okay. Sionke. Looks like Sisonke. 2012 to 17 says no one really claims to have discovered Africa, despite being mentioned in many accounts like the Greeks, Arabs, and Jews, unlike how America said to have been discovered, meaning that the land has a long and predated history before the arrival of the white man. Now, Africa will not be alive, would not be alive if we did not survive till the arrival of the white man. Meaning, we were surviving off of something. We knew how to hunt, we knew how to procreate and do shit. You know? Epistemic line is basically a color line, which is an ontology line. It's called the Eurocentric. It's called Eurocentric because the geography put themselves in the middle of the map and from where they came from, which is a very narcissistic point of view. Yeah. Cheers, Jeff. Wait for part 2.